Hello and welcome to the Keyboard Chronicles, a podcast for keyboard players of the gigging variety. I'm your host, David Holloway, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be here with you as always. And joining me is the erudite Mr. Paul Bindig. How are you, sir?
I'm really well, thanks, David, and nice to be chatting to you again.
Yes, look, it's been... Look, you're only human. You're getting to spend all this quality time with me at the moment. As we mentioned in previous shows, we're doing quite a number of interviews at the moment, and so it's been a lot of fun. And it doesn't get a lot funner, and I do know that's not a word. It doesn't get a lot more fun than talking to Mr. David Sancious. So for those that follow contemporary music over the last 30 or 40 years, David Sancious's name should very much ring a huge bell, both in jazz circles and as a go-to gigging keyboard player for a range of artists, from Sting and Peter Gabriel, again mentioning jazz. And although not the longest part of his career, he's also very famous for being one of the original keyboard players in the E Street Band. So we'll be covering all of that with David in the upcoming interview. And I know you know, Paul, that I'm a bit of a Springsteen fanboy, but so this is a bit of an exciting one for me.
Yeah, so folks, and sometimes we record these intros after we've done the interview, but on this occasion we're doing it, it's like a real intro. We haven't done the interview yet. And just watch out, folks, for the amount of fanboying that's going to go on from David.
I'm going to be controlled.
Who is a legit massive fan of Springsteen and everything he's done in the E Street Band. So I'm actually looking forward to the excitement that David is going to generate through the through the interview. But
pressure's on.
As you said, he's an iconic player. We use that word too often, I think, but he really is. We're lucky we get to talk to these people.
We are incredibly lucky, and so I will be controlling myself. And like in any guest, I'm acutely aware that one part of their career does not form the whole. And to say that David Sancious has done a whole lot more than E Street Band is an absolute understatement, as you'll hear. So hope you enjoy the interview, and we'll see you after the show. David, I cannot thank you enough for joining us. Really appreciate you taking the time.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for asking me, for having me be a part of your thing here. It's wonderful.
No problem. So I thought we might take a little bit of a different tack, David, given you've had such an amazing career. I thought we might work backwards, so from what you're currently up to and work our way back. So how's 2023 been treating you so far musically?
2023 has been amazing to me. So there's a lot of things happening. So to answer your question directly, what am I working on right now? I'm working on the next album. It's called Prisoners of Consciousness, and that will be I think they said that was the Eyes Wide Open was the 10th one, I believe they said something. And so this will be the 11th album. It's called Prisoners of Consciousness. It features, and most of it, I don't say most of it, but a good part of it is done. I have the good fortune of have already recorded tracks with Vinnie Colaiuta on drums, Will Calhoun, Adriano Molinari, who, if you're not familiar with him, he's an incredible drummer from Italy who I worked with when I was working with Zucchero years ago. I'm going to have some other guest artists. Ernest Carter is going to be on it. Dennis Chambers is going to make an appearance on it on drums. So that's the thing. In this studio space you see here, I've transitioned into probably the smallest studio space I've ever had, but I've made it very functional. And I've already, since I've been in Hawaii, I've written about 2 brand new songs for the album, and there's already a bunch already. So that's what's the newest thing. And in relation to that, I got a contact from a company called Iconoclastic Records. They contacted me, and they wanted to know if I would be amenable to a reissue and a remastering of a record of mine that I did originally in 1974, which was never officially released, which has been bootlegged around the planet, the whole flippin' Milky Way galaxy, forever. It's called Dance of the Age of Enlightenment, and it was recorded in 1974. And so they contacted me and said, we would very much like to know if you would be interested in remastering it. We made contact, and I connected with my engineer, Robert Fraza, who I've been working with since the 90s when I moved to Woodstock. And so we agreed to take it on and to remaster this project. And That's it. In fact, of where we are in it, Rob and I work together. Rob, on anything that I do engineering wise, just like my earlier albums and like Eyes Wide Open, Robert Fraza is a chief engineer. I'm like engineer number two. But between what we both bring to a file and the ability to sort of deal with it as music, as audio, or whatever, we work really, really, really well together. So we are on the tail end of remastering Dance to the Age of Enlightenment. And one thing I want to tell you, anyone who has heard that, the only musicians who have ever heard that project the way it was meant to be heard are myself, Ernest Carter, Jerry Carboy, who's passed away, Patti Scialfa, and Gail Moran. Okay? Patti Scialfa and Gail Moran did vocals on the two of the vocal songs that are on it. What happened mysteriously, and it's too much to go into, I'm going to get into maybe a little bit more in depth in the liner notes for this project, but somehow, without my permission, without my knowledge, and without my approval, the entire file of the music was mastered at a speed faster than it was recorded at. What that means is that no one has actually, I listened to the file. It's really hard for me to talk about because it was so emotionally devastating to me. I wasn't able to be at the mastering session because we were on the road. Now, when you're a young artist, okay, it wasn't like, I think that record was probably my third album of a 5-album record deal with the label. And so when you're like that in your stage of your career, you don't walk in and sort of, the first thing you don't do is you don't tell people what to do. You have this feeling that the company is attempting to assign people to you who are in your genre, in your milieu, as it were, in your world, and want to work with you and want to get the best out of you of your world of what you want to do. So you don't sort of walk around like, telling people what to do when something goes wrong. But when this thing went wrong, when I heard the test pressing, I'm sure we were on the road when it was mastered. I was there for the mixing session, but I was not there for the mastering because the record company would just shoot you back on the road. You had, back in those days, you had a budget, you had 6 weeks to make a record, and they want you to turn that thing in within the 6 weeks. It was like on the calendar. Not like, here come the brown shirts or anything. It was like 6 weeks as your window. Sort yourself out what studio you need to be in. But they wanted the product. And as soon as that was over, back on the road, which is what happened to us, okay? So I wasn't there for the mastering session. I'm back home, and I get sent a promotional copy of the record. And I went spare, as you guys say. I fucking lost it, man. I went spare in a big way. What the excuse me, I don't want to,
That's okay, language is fine.
As if it matters on the internet where you can call people racist and, so. I went fucking nuts, man. I lost my mind. Very, very, very upset. I think I was about maybe 20 years old, 21, somewhere in there. I know I started writing the sketches for that music when I was like late 19, early 20s. Anyway, I called up and I said, "What is wrong? Why does this sound so fast? What's going on? What's going on? What's wrong?" And I tried to make an appointment to correct it. Again, I'm like a young artist on this thing. I don't have the clout to like say, "Hey, this is fucking, don't you fuckers move an inch until we fix this," I don't want to release it. Then I'm trying to make appointments to fix it. Okay, you want a new mastering session? Oh, okay, well, let's see what we can do about that. Answer, not much, sir. For you at that time. So I'm talking, very upset. About maybe a week later, so there was a release date set. A week before, a solid 7 days before the release date of the project, the company called up and said, "David, we don't want to release this project right now. We're not going to release it. And what we want from you is we recognize, yes, we really appreciate your talent and where you were headed and all that stuff, but we want something more commercially accessible." They wanted something that could be played on the radio, long story short, right? So we said, look, we're going to release it, but not now. We want you to deliver us another record of your 5 or 4 at that time. I think we'd already done one. And then we'll release this some point down the road. Okay, fair enough. And again, it's all too emotionally and energetically. It's too much to go into to attempt to tell you how I felt and what that did to me as an artist. Because I'm telling you, at that point, that was the height of my creativity musically. It's not now. It's certainly not now. In no way, shape, or form. But back then, at the age of 19 or 20, when I'm writing, I think probably by the time we got it recorded, I was probably maybe 21, 22. You have to back up on the calendar. I'm born in 1953. Figure out when that was born. But there was a lot of rehearsal and a lot of writing, and we just didn't show up on a record year and make that happen. Tons and tons of rehearsals between myself and Ernest Carter and Jerry Carboy to get the music together. We actually performed that music live a bit. And again, on the god-awful interweb, which everything is out there, I'm sure you can find, if you go deep dive, some live recordings of us playing. We used to play the first and the second movement from Dance to the Age of Enlightenment.
So now that you're remastering the album, are you finding a bit of a redemptive thing in that you now finally have some control over the release and what it sounds like?
I don't know if redemption is the right word to use for that. I'm with you in terms of where we're going with the inner. There is a feeling, there's a great deep feeling that I have from having worked on this. And I'm telling you, emotionally exhausted. Because first of all, you have to understand how I felt. This is like we're going back 40 years now, okay? Right? Am I correct in that? Whatever, I'm 69.
That's right.
40 plus years. The energy, the pain that I felt when I first heard it so wrong, and all the this was days and weeks of things to where God, it's like I was just in the most amazing artistic place, and it was like someone shot me down with a gun. Pow. Okay, so all of that, and to deal with that, to absorb it, you cannot let this bring you down low. You got a job to do. You have a contract. You made an obligation. You have a band. Okay, to get over all that egoic, and ego is not the right word. All of that, I suppose it is a little bit, but all of that personal energy loss, and to not let that shut you down, and to carry on, use the people you have, and carry on. The whole thing has just been so emotionally it's exhausting. So what happened was, once I started, you have to get through, that's the first level of, I couldn't bear to hear it wrong. So what happens is Sony, the company, sends the files to myself and my engineer, Robert Fraza. They send us the original, quotation marks, files, the original fucked up files that somewhere in the mastering process, and it either had to be, and excuse me, man, they may both be well dead for all I know. Bruce Botnick was the co-producer, and his brother Doug Botnick was also available in the mixing sessions and the recording sessions. Somewhere in there, and now Robert Fraza, because he doesn't have any personal connection to the thing, he's going, well, maybe the machines were just misaligned in a bad way. Somebody, without my permission, without my request or approval, decided to speed up certain songs and to slow and basically to speed up certain songs. They speeded up certain songs to a certain degree and certain songs to another degree. It took hours of detailed listening for me to really find the proper speed. And thank God at the time we live in, we have software. We have software like Pro Tools and Logic Audio and all these things. You can get it and do all these things. So again, I don't want to go on too long about it, but to answer your question, it's been emotionally a roller coaster. And on the other end of the roller coaster, when I finally found, and it's you have to speed it down, you have to slow the entire file down. When it finally got to the right speed to where all the drum fills felt like, oh yeah, that's playable, and that sounds like what we did, I mean, it's cartoonish. If you listen to, like, first of all, the first and the second, I'm assuming that you guys are familiar with the music, okay, in its bootleg form. Am I right or wrong?
Broadly, yes. It's been a while, but have heard it, yes.
It's been around for a minute. Okay. If you listen to, when you listen to the drum fills on the first movement, even in the very introduction, they're so cartoonishly fast. It's like the music is when they sped that up, and they're thinking like we're going to make this more interesting for, I don't know, radio, as if anybody's going to play the first or second movement of Dance to the Age of Enlightenment on a radio. Used to, whatever you felt you were doing for the music, you completely went in the wrong direction. They destroyed the feel of it. It wasn't meant to be a display of fusion guys playing great chops. Oh, look how fast I can play this. It was never ever meant to be that. It was supposed to be funky and majestic. So all that stuff that is like, where there's pipe organs and trumpets, and it's just going down the road, it's meant to be majestic, not fast. And all those breaks in the first and second movement, it's meant to be like an orchestra that has a groove, It's basically like orchestral writing, but with a modern, I don't know, and I don't want to put African American, let's just say funk. It's like orchestral writing with a modern groove feel, okay? So when they sped all that up, it just totally destroyed it. So there was one day, and I got to tell, I'll share this with you guys because we're all like, we're all keyboard nerds, whatever we call ourselves. We're interested in this. At the original speed that they sent us the files to, the overture just sounded like a kind of trying to be a poppy song and very fast. Patty's voice sounded nice, but it's just going somewhere rushing. The first movement at the original speed that the bootleg copies and the promotional copies are out there, I'm telling you guys, it's unplayable. It's unplayable until you decrease it by 10%. At 10%, it becomes to be physically, okay, yeah, I studied classical piano and I'm a badass and I wrote it and I can play it. I'm sorry, it was like that. I was like, wait a minute, man, I wrote this stuff, I wrote it, and don't tell me that I ever intended for that to be that flippin' fast. No way. Took it down to 10%. The vocal songs were Patty singing, and there's another piece called The Dawn or something. They sounded good at 10% down. The feel of the music all sounded like, okay, this feels like what it is. We had another issue too, where I told Robert when we started, this thing, the first movement is in the key of E, okay? Now, what happened was, 40 years ago, we may not have tuned the piano to 440. There were discussions about tuning to 441, 442. That was an era where, orchestras were starting to tune different things. And I remember a conversation where I said, yeah, fuck, let's tune to 442, whatever, why not, whatever. But that tuning on top of multiple tracks of a monophonic synthesizer, a mini Moog, right? So all of that stuff, the whole score, actually, I wrote it out in an orchestral score. It's written out for piano, horns, woodwinds, and strings, and bass, okay? And it's all written, I remember in the studio, and I wrote it out in piano clef. I didn't write the horn parts out so that because it's not a horn player's going to play it. I need to remember what I wrote. But it was all like written out and played, and all those many overdubs of a monophonic synthesizer back then, which might not have been tuned to 440. My original thinking is like, if we just get the track in tune to the piano, it'll be fine, and it wasn't. There's too many variations. There's days in the recording where I can hear like, oh, the piano in the same track will sound different in the middle of the song than it sounds at the end, because somebody in the recording session got the idea like, well, we can mic it better or something. But there was all these variations of what we consider, tuning and all this kind of stuff. So it's not about the pitch. It's not about the file being perfectly in pitch with our modern stuff now. It's about the feel. It's about, would I even ask a drummer to play this particular passage that fast? And so by really picking out those passages, and I was A-Bing back and forth. I had several files set up in Logic with the original files that Sony sent us, and then my own, beginning to speed it down files. And very, very, I mean, I almost, how can I say it right? It was really tough. I had to just walk away from it at some point and be sure that what I was feeling was really me feeling it and not me being romantic about it. Romantic meaning wanting it to be, I don't know, some vision of maybe it actually wasn't. So I stepped away from it for a while, came back with some fresh ears and listened. And I'm telling you, man, sure enough, as soon as we got down to at the big files like the first and second movement, at minus 10%, okay, it started to feel, yes, it's playable. At 12, it's great, relaxed. At 14, when we got to 15, and I went straight from 12 to 16, just for fun. When it got to 16, and I had notes, very detailed notes in my thing about how does it feel at this passage, at bar 96 and to 105 and all these kind of things. I just put like, wow, and exclamation marks, caps, wow. My body just like woke up again. And it's like my body, forget about my ears and 440 and anything else. My body felt like, oh, you're back home. And I hadn't felt that music in my body since the 40s, since before the mastering session. We were all crazy about cassettes back then, and Ernest Carter was the sort of band archivist. But we all had these portable cassette machines and stuff. We were crazy. We were recording every flipping thing, So we knew when we left that session what it felt like, and if there was any issue. And we started that project with an intent to not be like that, because we were not trying to be three guys trying to show off. Hey, look at how fast we can play. No, fuck that. Again, pardon my language. It was all about trying to get the musicality in this potentially unique idea of some very orchestral writing with some very modern drumming, some modern feel of a groove, And I hit it. So what it ended up was, for your technical thing, it's 115. 115, not once added, just that extra notch up. That's just great. Everything, and it swings. I mean, there's a part in the end of the third movement after all these crazy accents, was the recapitulation, where it just takes your body. You don't have to be tapping your foot or thinking or know anything about music. It's so engaging that and it's a waltz. It's in 6/8. It's a funky waltz, actually, the first movement. And the second movement is, instead of all this frisky stuff, it's meant to be ominous, And I remember I just got my notes back from Robert, my engineer, Robert Fraser. He said the same thing, like, wow, at 115, it's like dramatically different. The second movement, instead of being this display of how fast you can play, it's ominous, My inspirations for that stuff musically are the great composers that inspired me in classical, like Beethoven, like Wagner, like, too many people you can name, but it's like the drama of music, how you can with notes and not a whole lot of notes, and you don't have to be very proficient. The right notes with the right energy, you can create a scene like it was like Spielberg directed it. You can create so much imagery with just music, just raw, straight up music, played the proper way with the right intensity, the right feeling from your heart, and the right sound. You got pictures straight away. You have imagery that is like unbelievable. And now that's what it feels like, to me. So again, that's a long way around, Davey. But to answer your question, I feel I won't say not vindicated, but I feel blessed. I feel very happy that I'm able to share this music with people the way it was always meant to be heard. So I don't know. Again,
And I think vindication is definitely the better word, David, not redemption. I think you've picked that perfectly.
so and again, long story short, and I'll be quiet. I'm very happy that the opportunity has come my way. I'm very happy that we live in a time where we have the software and the technology to correct things, and also now that we have it at the proper tempo for all these pieces, now we're the last phase of this. We're just doing the audio enhancement. And I just got some files from Robert this morning for me to check out. And as soon as I okay them or give him some other notes on what I might want to change, then that project will be done. And I think it'll come out probably late summer.
David, listening to you talk about that and your obvious passion for it, one of the real messages I took from that was music's not a technical exercise. It's about making people feel. It's about the emotion and the impact and the images you draw up in your brain. And with that in mind, I'd love to ask you about your release Eyes Wide Open, which I believe came out in 2019. And this is definitely an album that has a message and is designed to make people feel. And I believe you're even quoted as saying it was like it's a musical movie. And I'd love to know what you were trying to say with those songs for those of our listeners who may not have had the chance to hear it yet.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for asking about that, because I think until I do better, or until I do more, I consider Eyes Wide Open my finest moment musically. Again, until and if I surpass that. You know, Eyes Wide Open, I feel like it's the one project where it sort of shows both sides. I have such a mixed musical upbringing, you know. It's almost like, I was thinking about this the other day. It's almost like I am musically, I'm the child of not an interracial marriage, not my both African American, but if you could imagine a musical interracial marriage. My mother was completely into classical music, deep, and she inspired me to play the piano. My father was deeply into jazz music. So I'm around these people all day long, and the exposure was never compartmentalized, if you know what I mean. You get both of your parents all day long. So, and I enjoyed each influence. I'm a little kid. I was like, God. I started playing piano when I was 5.5. Okay, when we moved from one house in a town that didn't have a piano. As a condition of the sale of the new house, the previous owners didn't want to take the piano with them. And it wasn't a great piano. It was just a common upright piano of the day. It was a Harman Kardon or something. And, you know, for me, it was magic. But it's just the combination of the exposure to these two people who, you know, they're the same race, but they have different tastes and everything. And then me being on the receiving end of it all, and then here come I with my own little what I like and don't like, you know. And then add on to that, I had two older brothers who equally had their own musical taste. My middle brother Edward, he turned me on to all kinds of music. He turned me on to Joni Mitchell, music like the Grateful Dead. He turned me on to Jimi Hendrix. My oldest brother was very much into jazz and more avant-garde stuff like Sun Ra and Coltrane and all that kind of stuff. So I would basically, it's kind of like, I'm lucky I survived. I could have drowned in all that music. I could have really, you know, I guess if I didn't have any anchor myself, I would have either been like, oh, it's too much, or like I would have just walked away from all of it. You know what I mean? But there's something in me that, because I just love, I'm hard pressed to find something that we call musical that repels me, that I find like, oh, that's stupid and disgusting and not worthy of even a second of our attention. All the things that I spoke about, and I set it up on purpose to where side one is all the vocal songs. Side two is on purpose all instrumental. And again, I wanted to show, not as if it had never been shown before in previous projects, but I wanted to show it in a more sort of unified way of like, this is him vocally and this is his point. I just wanted the people to digest that way if they cared to, you know, rather than have, here's a vocal song, here's an instrumental song, here's a vocal song, here's a song with me and Vinny Colaiuta sounded like we're fucking, you know, going to another planet. I wanted the things that had social relevance to be next to each other. And you would follow them one by one. So just digest that whole message as one little pie. And then you flip the thing over or carry on. And then, again, you have 4 pieces of music, completely instrumental. And again, there's a nice variation in that. But I just think that as a way to digest music, I felt good about presenting it that way. I'm probably going to present it that way in the future. Although the next project, I gotta say, the next maybe 2 projects, especially the next one, it's going to be more vocally based. The music will be quite, you know, intense in what it is, but there's going to be more vocals than not. I think there's going to be maybe 2 songs that'll be completely instrumental, right? But I like this whole idea of the format, and the thing that I experimented with when I was mixing it, to where I took audio from the internet on the songs like If, on songs like If on Urban Psalm. So I had audio of what it was about. Now, Urban Psalm is about racism in America in black colleges. And in fact, you imagine, fucks. Oh man, excuse me for cursing.
No, it's all good.
Can you imagine, what are you trying to do? You've made your way, you've navigated your teen years, you're alive, and you're about to go where? You're going to college, for God's sake. It's all figured out, your family, yourself, a combination of people. You're now in an institution of learning, okay? And why do you want to do that? Because you want to go ahead and have a nice life and make a contribution to society and family. What happens? Here's a bunch of kids in your face chanting a chant that they must have rehearsed, okay? Again, I'm going to slightly digress, but I'll come back. So the idea was, I took audio about that event. I put 1 bit of audio on the left side, 1 in the center, and 1 on the right side. And they're all going to equal levels. So it's about the same subject, different stuff, but it teases your brain. You can't quite decide what to focus on, but part of you is focusing, you're getting all of it in a weird way. And then, pow, the song kicks in. I did that technique on Urban Psalm, and I did it again on If. Same thing. Now, different subject. Urban Psalm is about racism in America, and especially, you know, God almighty, listen to this chant. There's one, you can hear it. It starts with, it goes, you're something's from a tree. You better not mess with me, you hairy, hairy nigger. And they, of course, the thing is bleeped. But the thing that gets me, when I listen to that, and I made mixing decisions when I'm doing this thing, okay, and to this day, it cracks me up. It's such a blatantly racist thing to say. You know, you come from a tree, you better not mess with me, you hairy, hairy nigger. It's the fact that they said hairy twice, to me, is comic. Because it would have been a good enough insult to just say, you hairy nigger. Pow, cut it off. But you hairy, hairy nigger. And if you listen to the audio of it, they rehearsed it. It's rehearsed. They all say it at the same time. It's like a football chant. You know? They're all in rhythm. They all know to say hairy twice, you know. It's not like someone forgot to say hairy, hairy nigger, and some said hairy nigger. So this is a rehearsed thing. So it's the energy of that, like, you guys get together and actually rehearse this shit, you know, that made it comic for me. And to this day, I listen in the car every now and then. I don't listen to myself too much, but when I'm in the car, I'll listen to it. And every time that hair, the same time, second time they say hairy, hairy nigger, it just makes me crack up. I was like, the stupidity of the energy of your racism it's comic. It's comic. You didn't need to do that. And you realize how foolish you seem and sound and look to put that much energy into a chant. a hatred chant. But now I'm
No, but again,
learning.
you raise a good point there, David, because you talked about how you want to get across a message, and I can't think of a more important message than what you've just discussed. I mean, it doesn't get any more important than that,
I
really.
Yeah,
really,
and
I have to apologize. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I really have to apologize for going on so long sometimes because you guys are asking questions about stuff I care about, and sometimes I
Yeah,
really
absolutely.
I start out with I know where I want to get to with you guys, but because you're so open and you're willing to listen, that I sort of spin off into
No
it.
problems at all.
I don't want to miss the core.
David, it's not a problem at all. And I think the fact you're passionate about these things is exactly what we love to see. So thank you so much for being open and sharing with us. And I think Urban Psalm. You mentioned the ridiculousness of the chant, and then for our listeners again who haven't heard this music, and I really encourage you to, and we will put a link in the show notes of all this music of David's. But this is then juxtaposed with the beautiful words of Dr. Martin Luther King, which is some spoken word things. So it really creates that. It even
Yeah,
highlights the ridiculousness of the statement even more, I think.
yeah, yeah,
It does.
yeah.
And speaking, David, of diversity of output, and
Okay.
sorry to sort of segue a little bit,
Yeah.
but in 2019, just working our way backwards a little bit more, you were involved in the Western Stars project
Yes, I
with
was.
Bruce.
Yeah.
And I mean, diversity of output with Bruce Springsteen's never an issue, but this one definitely had a different feel. What's your recollections of that project, and what was it like going back to work with the team there?
Well, I have great memories of that project because when he started that project, excuse me, was it 2018 or 2019 or something? 2018, I think, or 17, whenever he called me to do it. He called me up before we move. We live in Hawaii forever now. I will die on this island, have my ashes scattered on the beach. I know the beach and everything. Um, he called me up, and when I was living in Woodstock, New York, we actually only lived physically about an hour and a half from each other. He lives in upstate in northern New Jersey, and around the area of Colts Neck, right? And that was by car. It's about maybe an hour and 20, hour and a half. So he rang me up. He said, "Hey, Davey, come. I'm working on this different project. It's not an E Street Band music project, and I really love you to come down and do it." So he said, "Hey, come down and stay for a few days." I drove down, or I was driven down. Actually, I should say I would drive. I was driven down there, and I stayed at the house for. He's got a beautiful recording studio on his property. It's like a main house, and then I think it must have been um, something for horses at one point that they converted into a studio. But it's very spacious and lovely. I stayed there for like 3, 4 days, and he played me the music of Western Stars and described his whole concept of how he really wanted to move away from the regular E Street Band stuff, and he was just being inspired by. I mean, he mentioned composers. He mentioned Jimmy Webb and Burt Bacharach, and just this whole kind of thing. And what I thought about it was interesting, is that Bruce is very musically. He's very expansive. Don't think that just because of the music you hear that he does as him. Don't think that's all he's aware of. Please, I mean, the guy he's really deep. He's deep musically like that, and he's deep intellectually like that, like literally, as far as literature and books and just the great literary things of our time. He's way deeper than you might know about on the surface. Okay, so he said, okay, well, I want to just broaden this whole thing, and it's all inspiration from him. It's all sort of it's what it is for all of us, really. You just look. Monday is Monday, and Tuesday is Tuesday, and they're all their own day. Each day is like its own movie, and it's all coming at you nonstop. Sometimes it's fast and furious. Sometimes it's so gentle you can't even perceive it. You don't think anything's happening to you, but it happens. And as it happens, you make the adjustment in your expression. He suddenly feels like, I want to. He started writing differently. He started using chords that he never used before. Like the major sevens and all these different kind of chords that people like Burt Bacharach and Jimmy Webb and other people were using because he felt it. So that's really what it was. I thought that was a sort of maybe his first harmonically but it wasn't a step away from anything. It was like he just grew. It's like he got an inch or two taller, you know, and he's already pretty kind of tall enough, It's just he just sort of expanded in a natural way. He wasn't trying to get anywhere. It's just like here's when he knows that I know harmonically and musically how to, that I understand all that as music, and I can, make a contribution to whatever he wants to do. So we had a great time. I think I was there for about 4 days. It was very relaxed. We hung out. The sessions didn't start until like after lunch. You had your own time in the morning, and he did this whole other thing. When we were teenagers together, I met Bruce when I was 15, and he was like 19. And in the early days of the E Street Band and all that stuff, once we were able to record, our work ethic was like work, 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 work until you drop. It was the only thing you stopped working for was to rest so you could get up and start working again. It was a real kind of focus, and long hours and fun hours. Not in a torturous way, but like nobody was interested in going to sleep anytime soon. Because number one, the music was real interesting. Number two, we were all real young and we really wanted to get somewhere out of fucking New Jersey. Again, pardon me. We really wanted to be what we became. All of us, We really wanted to be what we became as musicians. We wanted to have our lives in music. We wanted music to be what we did to make a living. I don't want to be working in anybody's office, from 9 to 5, doing a thing that I maybe have shown some aptitude for in high school, but in fact, I fucking hate it. I'm miserable, So, we all escaped that, and that's its own kind of, unifying, bonding thing. But,
and David, you raised a great point about you both growing. So in these sessions, because you've both grown so much as musicians over those years, did you find the relationship during those recording was even more fruitful and enjoyable than maybe it was back in the early days?
That's interesting. It's different because the environment in the early days of recording in E Street Band, we would all be there as a band. Everybody's sort of in their place, and we would get a basic track together, and then producer and Bruce would sign off, okay, that's a good basic track, and then we would individually go in and overdub or add to anything, or fix a part, Basic track's great, but your piano note and the thing, just fixing stuff. This was more like the song itself was sort of just about, it was completely realized as a song, anyway, like from Bruce, like harmonically, melodically, and verbally. He had more than enough words, melody was solid, he knew where he wanted to go. It was just more like the texture of it and the feel. And I remember those Western Stars things. We did this stuff live. Bruce was in the booth, I'm at the piano in the room. The drummer was in the booth, and the bass player, the producer, was playing bass, I believe, Ron and Yellow. But we did that live. So it's a very different environment, recording-wise. Very relaxed. Very, very relaxed. And Bruce doesn't have a lot to say. He sort of knows what he wants to do. We're going this way. Let's go. But on the way of going there, if anything unsuspected happens that's positive, he's all for it. He doesn't have like we're going here and nowhere else. We're going this way, and whatever happens in the course of going that way, if it's positive, will be more than accepted. So the recording atmosphere is very different from the E Street days, but very relaxed and very productive. Probably interested. I just finished working with him. We've been working together since November of last year, 2022. He called me up and he said he wanted to do publicity for the volume 1 of that album, Only the Strong Survive. Okay, and he had sent me. I think I might be on one of the songs on that album because they sent it to me so I could do it in my studio here in Hawaii, and I sent it back to them. I'm not sure if that song made it on the album. And anyway, he calls me. They sent it back in February of last year. So time goes on. early November, he calls me. He says, "Hey, Davey, I got to do publicity for Only Strong Survive. They want us on the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, and they want us to do 4 songs, okay, from the album." Okay, great, yeah. So they flew me over, and we had 2 rehearsals. They flew me from Hawaii, where I live here, and to New York, and it was a kind of a 10-day period. We had 2 rehearsals. One rehearsal, like just after everyone showed up, and it was very focused. We had the one thing I had to say about working with Bruce. He's not wishy-washy. He's focused. He's not like all over. He's not like hard either. But it's like you walk in, you know what sort of the job is, and then in the course of doing the job, stuff happens. You know. So we had this. We knew the 4 songs. It wasn't like, okay, well, maybe we're gonna do this song and maybe not. You know, we're only gonna do these 4 songs. Nobody's gonna come in your face at the last minute with like, hey, do you know? You know, by the way, do you remember? No, we're doing 4 songs. They sent us all the music, you know, the charts and everything in audio. So we had the audio version and the actual notation of the thing. So we had a 1 rehearsal. And then in New York City at first studio, and then I'm waiting for like, when's the next rehearsal? Oh, he's going to London to do publicity. He did like a lot. He did like Graham Norton, and you know, the stuff about the project. And then like 10 days later, he comes back and goes, 1 more rehearsal in New York, and we did that same 4 songs, even tighter. He came in and sort of tweaked a little parts. He's funny, like he'll be at the rehearsal. So he'll show up at rehearsal and he'll pow, and you do it, and he'll put his part in the rehearsal, and then at the end of it, before you go, he go, you know, in the middle of this thing, he just does this thing where these tiny little subtle tweaks. He goes, you know where the backing vocals they did this like ooh, ooh. Okay, so that's in one part. He'll go, what? Do it the second time as well. Or like, don't do it, do half of it the first time and do all of it the second time. It's musically very subtle stuff, but it works. And he sort of zooms in at kind of the last moment and does that after it's been presented with, here's the thing. And then he'll do a little tiny tweak like that. And we're all looking at it like, shit, yeah, actually, that's the way it should have always been. It's brilliant, you know? So the whole session was like that. The rehearsal was great. You can see that stuff on the internet still, I believe. If you've Bruce Springsteen / Jimmy Fallon Tonight Show, I believe you can probably still find all 4 songs up there. And so that was a fabulous time.
And you said, David, you've still been working with, like, that was those rehearsals. That was the last time, or
yeah. Here's where I'm getting to the rest of the thing, which may be of interest. To where. Okay, that project was over. I was scheduled to come back. This was late November. We're on Thanksgiving time, November in America, American Thanksgiving, towards the end of the month, November. And I was scheduled to come back to New Jersey to do a project of my own compositions with the drummer from the band Living Colour, Will Calhoun. Right, we have a duo called Open Secret. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. We started a couple years ago. It was a pre-pandemic project that we started. We did a brief tour of the Northeast. We played like New York, Boston, Chicago, you know, a bunch of stuff. We recorded it all. So this was our first concert post-pandemic, and it was in Red Bank, New Jersey, which is very close to where, you know, Bruce lives. So, and thank God, it was a very successful concert. The first time for us playing together in about 3 years or so. And again, I don't know if you get to hear some of the. We've recorded everything we've done live, and eventually it's all going to be coming out by degrees. It's brilliant. But Will Calhoun and I can sound as Open Secret. And Will has this amazing, unique combination of playing like acoustic drums. And Will is a drum master. He knows just the drum kit acoustically, all the genres, pop, rock, jazz, fusion, classical, whatever. He studied Malian music. He went to Africa and studied with like Malian musicians. He's been in Australia and studied with native Australians. He's like deep into rhythm. And so he has this combination of acoustic instruments, but he's also, like myself, deeply into electronics. He's way into electronics. He's amazing. He's got like time delays and pedals and effects units on his stuff. My main instrument is an 88 note weighted action synthesizer. That is the state of the art of sound production, in my humble opinion. I use a Yamaha uh, uh, Montage.
Montage, yep.
The full baby. Can't take anything less. Less than, I need all 88 notes. That thing is a beast. And I've been at it for many years, and I feel I'll still maybe I'll go on more than deeper scratching the surface, but there's much more in there to get. So between the two of us, what we get up to, we have a respect and an appreciation for acoustic music. Everything we can do straight ahead jazz, electronic, and to like, you never heard that. You don't even know what you're listening to. We get up to some serious mischief. That concert was on at the Vogel Theater, January 3rd in Red Bank, New Jersey. Bruce was coming back from vacation, as he told me later. So I finished the concert, got back home, and I get an email from his producer. No, before I went home, I'm not telling it right. Before I went home, he said, he got back home with the family. He said, hey, before you go home, why don't you come by the house and, we'll do something. He's working on volume 2 of that Only the Strong Survive. I don't know what he's going to call that, but it's the soul. We're calling it the Soul Music Project. Volume 2 of that. He goes, before you get on a plane, come by the house. I go, yeah, absolutely, great. So we did that. I went to the house. We did 4 songs and had dinner in 5 hours. It's like we worked so well together. I showed up and they had it so presented to like everything was so tight and ready to roll. All I needed to do is fit my part in it. So I'm playing like acoustic piano and Hammond organ, right? And we just went down the chart and he's there. It's like great. And I don't remember the songs. They're all like soul music classics from the Motown or the Stax era, all that kind of stuff. And we're just having the best time in the world, just killing it. And then the phone rings and he goes, oh, it's Patty. Dinner's ready. She wants us to come over and have dinner now. Come like now. And that was the end of it. Okay, session. Patty says dinner's ready. We're stopping. And we turn everything off and go in there. We had a fabulous dinner. Myself and Bruce and Patty and Ron and Yellow, the producer. And I did 3 videos back in, because the thing came out in March of 2020, okay, before the stuff shut down. So I was able to play them, the music, and the videos, and they were, and actually Bruce made a contribution. I was trying to wrap that project up because we had to sell our house and get out of there before the end of 2019. And to finish the project, Bruce made a contribution, Sting made a contribution, and Peter Gabriel made a contribution. So I could finish the recording, the mixing and mastering before I had to get out of the house and get on the plane and get here. So I know that I sent him a CD in 2020 through his tech. But anyway, we had this great dinner conversation, and I played him the videos. There's a video for the title track, Eyes Wide Open, a video for In the Middle of the Night, and a video for If. And they really loved it. It was just the greatest evening. So then, that evening's done. Okay, great. We have 4 songs and everything. Great. I get on the plane and go home, and we sort of text back and forth. And I get home, and the next day after I get home, I get an email from his producer with like, come back, ! Bruce wants you to come back and finish off the rest of the songs of the album, which I did. I stayed here for a couple of days. I came back, and then I think we did 10 songs. So now, I think I'm on like 14 or 15 songs on this next thing coming out. And I was actually scheduled to go back. He wanted me to come back and get a picture. He wants a picture of the 2 of us together for the album. And it was 1 or 2 more songs he wanted me to sort of tweak. I think he did a Supreme song he did. I don't remember. But his touring schedule, he's actually on tour.
Yes.
And all this stuff that we were able to do was just that the calendar just worked out, that he was physically available to where we could do all that. So should have already been back there by now, but it hasn't worked out yet. But somewhere in the next, I think, 2 weeks or so, I'll be back in New Jersey and finishing that.
Great. And David, can I make the argument that's a testament to your relationship? Because from the very get-go, when you left E Street, and we will go a little bit into that later, it was always amicable. It was always with Bruce's support, and that relationship has continued to this day.
Totally. We never had a harsh word about anything, especially about anything musically, and he's just such he's just a prince of a human being. He's one of those people. And who was that rare? It was a general, not Coriolanus. It's back in those times where this guy he was very, very powerful, very, very rich, but he was very, very ethical. You know what I'm thinking of? It's a Shakespeare thing, but he was the man. He was one of these rare people who was in a position of authority, but he always used it wisely. He never, ever, overstepped, and made sure that anything he was doing was to the benefit of the greater kind of good. He's just like that for me, and no, we've never had I didn't leave the band because of anything musical. We fell out. It was just like we were playing, I'm so glad, man. I'm really enjoying talking to you guys. Normally it would be like, oh, I got to go pick up my wife from work, and I don't. Her friend of ours is in Honolulu. She just borrowed her car for a while. So we were playing at a place that no longer exists in New York. It's called the Bottom Line. And back in the day, you guys are too young you probably ever seen a show there, but it was very near NYU. It was near Greenwich Village, on the outskirts of that, and it was a club. And the top acts, because you had places to play. If you're on the top of the thing, you're Madison Square Garden. If you're, the next level down, you're here and there, you're maybe, and then if you're classical, Carnegie Hall. But there were places like the Bottom Line, the place called the Other End, smaller place called the Bitter End, where Clarke used to play. Anyway, the Bottom Line was like the place to play. And Bruce had gotten to the level of being able to play at the Bottom Line for 5 nights consecutive, right? I remember I saw Miles Davis play there, and that's how they used to do it. Big, or people who were already big, but not like arena, stadium big, but like you're fucking big, you're famous, or you're about to be really famous. That's where you played. I saw Miles Davis play there. It was like outrageous. Okay, so now I'm in the band. We get booked in the Bottom Line for 5 nights. Probably in the middle of the run, and that could be me remembering it romantically, but somewhere in those 5 nights, an A&R guy named Tom Werman for Epic Records. Epic was a division of Columbia, which is pre-Sony. Okay, it's how old I am. I'm talking to you guys today.
Oh, we remember Epic. Epic were Epic.
Anyway, this gentleman came backstage, and this was on our break. Now, when you played the Bottom Line back in those days, you had to do 2 sets. You had to do like an 8 o'clock show, and probably like a 90, maybe not even a 90-minute set now or something. And then they would clear the place out, get a whole new audience, and you played your second show. Somewhere in between those 2 shows, a knock on the dressing room door. I'm back there just getting over myself. I'm like, this is great. We're playing at the Bottom Line. And I've got to tell you, man, the E Street Band back in the day, the original version of that stuff, we kicked ass. We had, and what we didn't have as like sophistication or I don't know, expertise, sophisticated. It was energy. It's just energy, man. We went for it, and straight across the board. No flagging. We just had a beautiful time playing together. So anyway, I'm feeling really good about it all. And knock on the door. This guy goes, "Oh, my name's Tom Werman. I'm from Epic Records." And he goes, "We came across someone sent us a demo tape of yours that you did years ago." Really? Because I didn't send it out. This is the thing. The people who own the recording studio in Atlanta and Richmond, Virginia, that I used to work at, in lieu of paying me or whatever. Sometimes we got paid, but they would offer us studio time. We got an hour free. You guys want to come in and do a song or something? Was able to put together a demo tape of my compositions. All those compositions ended up being the songs on my first album, Forest of Feelings. So this guy from Epic Records had heard this demo tape with some of the songs, not even all of them are going to be on that. And he said, hey, listen, are you still writing music? I said, yeah, that's what I do. I'm always writing music, no matter who I'm working with or, what I'm doing. He said, well, we were really impressed with your thing. Would you be interested in doing like another demo tape in a better studio and better conditions? And I said, yeah. First of all, I could barely, like, you kidding me, man? Come on. Come on, Santa Claus. Yeah, what do you think? Would I be interested in that? Yes, I would be. Very much. So I said all that, and we made a date to do it. And a couple weeks later, I was able to carve out some time. We did all that. Again, long story short, eventually I was able to do a new demo tape for them, and they were very excited. They accepted it. They accepted it, but they took their time. They took about 2 weeks. They turned it in. We really like it. Okay, well, next phase, contract, no contract. So we shopped it independently. Myself and I had a kind of manager at the time. We shopped it in the Arista Records. We shopped it to Atlantic Records. I actually, tell you the truth, man, I always wanted to be on Atlantic Records. Because Atlantic Records, especially, maybe not especially, but overall, but in the black community, Atlantic Records was the shit, man. They had the best artists. They had jazz artists. They had the best pop artists. It was just a great, great place. And what I loved about Atlantic Records was it was partly run by musicians. Ahmed Erdogan and Nishui Erdogan. These guys were straight up musicians, man. They could write string arrangements and stuff. They were real. And it's the first time you feel like, oh my God, I'm not talking to a guy who sells shoes or toothpaste before he showed up here telling me what key my song should be in because he doesn't think it sounds good. Go fuck yourself. It's like that. You're not dealing with these people. You're dealing with actual skilled musicians. And that we just always held them in the highest esteem, So anyway, but they didn't bite. And then finally, Arista was about to say yes. And I think Columbia heard, and then they said, yes, we want to offer you the contract. And then I was offered the contract. And then I had to show up to Bruce one day and said, oh man, listen, this has happened. And he was like, he tells it to this day. I think in his memoir, he says he thinks he cried real tears when I had to tell him, I'm sorry, brother, but I gotta, I have an opportunity. But if anyone ever understood that, it's him. And he was the kindest person in the world. And I want everyone to understand that because we love each other like the brothers we actually are, from different mothers and different fathers. We are spiritually, essentially, in our hearts and minds, so close, And he was all for it. I mean, his manager was like, no, you can't let him stop it, try and get in it. No, he's like, no way. He's got an opportunity, and we always knew we both wanted to do the same thing. I always wanted to make records. I always wanted to be a studio musician, When I was coming up, and my father used to play me records, and we say, wow, Dad, who's on this record? And you look, who's playing drums? And Herbie Hancock, piano. Wow. Who's on this record? So-and-so. Herbie's on this record too. All your favorite musicians, you see that these guys are skilled and they're able to play this ocean of music. I always wanted to be that. I always wanted to be a composer. Number one, my reason for being involved in music was I want to always to be a composer. And I don't think of myself as a guy who plays well, who happens to write music. I think of myself as a composer who I don't happen to play well. I worked at it really hard. I had a lot of training and everything. But I put my composing interest and intent first, and I play well and I enjoy playing well. But no, we and to this day, we're like, we're just like this. There's projects coming up after this E Street Band project, a tour that he's on now is over, that we'll be involved in. And the other 14 songs that we did and coming back, it was just magic, just the best time, the best energy, and a lot of love.